How's it going, guys? It's your boy Mike from Seattle, and today I have with me Dion from Dion Talk Financial Freedom. He's an active guest on Michael Zuber's channel, One Rental at a Time. He has his own YouTube channel, which I'll put the link for that in the description. Make sure you show him some love. But I brought him on because, like me, he is a police officer, lives in Washington State, which is a very expensive area, house hacks, and now has 16 rental properties. He bought his first rental in 2011. It's only been 10 years. He's up to 16 rental properties. Dion, say hey.
Howdy, happy to be here.
Appreciate it. What I want to talk about with Dion today is how he went from being in the military and then being in law enforcement. Where was the mental shift in his mind that made him say, okay, now I want to invest in real estate? So, Dion, you bought your first house in the year 2000, but you weren't expecting to be a landlord at that point. That was just, go ahead and tell me what that first house was.
So purchased a house in 2000 as the house with the white picket fence to raise the kids in. Had never in my life thought I would invest in real estate. My original goal was 20 years in the Marine Corps, then 20 years in law enforcement and retire and call it good. 2 pensions, be good to go. After Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized, so my plans got changed. In 2008, the recession hit, so I was let go from a police department. So I got tired of my sources of income being taken away due to things outside of my control. And I have a brother who retired 6 years ago now, and with 10 paid off rental properties. And I thought, maybe I should try that. Except when I decided to invest, it was about 2009. I was laid off from the police department, was teaching at a truck driving school, making $17 an hour, found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name that I didn't know about until the divorce, and was a single parent with 3 kids. So getting into real estate was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can empathize completely because single father with full custody of my son. When I first started my channel, I had $1,000 in the bank, and that was it. Now, luckily for me, I didn't have a bunch of debt come up that and I'd like to hear what you did with the debt. Did you just bite the bullet and pay it all down? Like, what was your strategy?
So when I originally found out about the debt, if I could say this without my voice getting all emotional, because I don't like emotions,
Sure.
it was actually several $100,000 in debt. And so something that anybody watching can take away from this is I was calling one of the debtors to find out, how do I pay this? I didn't even know it existed. And, coming from law enforcement, bankruptcy wasn't an option because that can be a career killer. My ex filed bankruptcy, so all of her debt, since we're in a community property state, became my debt. The creditor asked me, do you plan on filing bankruptcy also? Because if you did, instead of the $13,000 on this one credit card, we would take 20%. And a little light bulb went on in my head, and I said, you'll take less money than I owe you? I didn't think I owed them, but it was legally in my name.
Right.
They said, yes. So I called every single debtor, and that several $100,000 came down to $89,000, which I'll talk about before we're done. This thing called the income snowball is what I used to pay off that debt. Everybody talks about Dave Ramsey's debt snowball.
Right.
I used what's called the income snowball.
So I've heard you mention that in a couple of your videos. I remember I did an interview with Michael Zuber one day, and he was talking about one rental at a time. I said he needs to start calling it the rental snowball, and steal it from Dave. But okay, so you end up with all this debt. You're able to talk it down. The reason I'm highlighting some of this, and not to make you relive sour parts of your history, but what I want people to understand is that even when you come from like extremely difficult backgrounds or situations, unfortunately you lost a job and then you went to making $17 an hour teaching people how to get their CDL, you find out about all of this debt, single dad with 3 kids. I'm sure, that I got 1 kid and it's costly. Uh, so all of that's going on in your life. When did you, and I know you said, hey, my brother's retired with 10 rentals, but when and how did you make the conscious decision, today is the day I'm going to make real estate investing happen?
My brother used a home equity line of credit on a house. His house was paid off, so he had money to use. I didn't. I had debt, not a lot of income, not a lot of savings, bad debt to income ratio. So I looked into real estate, and I realized that what I needed was rental income on my tax returns so that I could buy more rentals and use the rental income of future purchases in my debt to income ratio. So how I did that was I moved from my house into an apartment. So I'm renting an apartment, but I own a house that I rented out. That rental income I reported on my tax return. So 2 years later, lenders would let me look at a duplex. So I could live in one side like you are, rent out the other, but that other side's rental income and the rental income from my house would be shown on my debt to income ratio. And so everybody understands 4 units, 3 units, 2 units, or 1 unit gets the same lending, 30-year fixed rate. You can use FHA, VA. At the time, I used a 5% down conventional loan. I had saved up a little over $20,000. I was making $17 or $18 an hour at that point, but I was working a lot of overtime and I was avoiding life creep. I wasn't letting my expenses grow as my overtime would add up. And I moved into the duplex with a 5% down conventional, which hasn't been a loan that's been available for the last several years as lending fears went up. Now they want 15 or 20% down for conventional, but FHA and VA are still the same, 3.5 or 0% down for small multifamily. In November of this year, of 2021, depending on when you're watching this, there is a loan product coming out that will let you do 5% down conventional on a small multifamily as long as you are at 80% or lower of the median income for your area. Mm. So that's a time when somebody else might be able to repeat the same thing. I prefer conventional loans to FHA because with FHA, the mortgage insurance lasts the entire length of the loan. So unless you pay it off or refinance, you're stuck with it. With conventional, as soon as you get up to 22% interest, the lender will drop the PMI. That was my goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes it cash flow better once you drop that stuff off. Believe it or not, so in 2018, when I bought this duplex, I got a conventional loan with 5% down myself. And I know that it was rare. Caliber Home Loans took care of me and they were able to get it done, but I did have to do PMI. And because my debt to income ratio was right on that edge, I ended up actually having to pay all of my PMI up front so that my monthly payment would drop enough so they could justify the debt to income ratio and the payments and all that stuff. But I managed to get in here. Okay, so with everything working against you, you managed to get in, well, you leave your house. Was that first house that you left when you moved into an apartment, was it cash flowing? Was the rents coming in covering the mortgage with any profit?
No. In that first year, I made every mistake you can think of.
Okay.
And the problem was, and this is the mistake that a lot of new investors make, I didn't see myself as a landlord. I saw myself as somebody testing the waters, dipping my toes in to see if I can handle single parent, working full time, and managing a property. So instead of educating myself and getting a lease and screening tenants, I rented to a friend because you figure you can trust friends, not a stranger, with a handshake and no lease. But he was also a single parent, so I understood his struggles when the rent got late,
right,
and then became never. Mm-hmm. So when I went to the house to actually have a face-to-face conversation and say, "Hey, you haven't paid the rent," that's when I found out he didn't live there. He had moved out, rented the house to someone else, was collecting rent and keeping it and not paying me.
Oh,
he had
no.
started some projects, put half a wall at the top in a loft area, a door right at the edge of stairs, not to code, like all of these problems I had to fix. I was so frustrated.
Yeah.
And so I believe that my brother was just a super genius compared to me because he was able to do it. And I obviously can't handle this. So I tried to give the house away. I called everyone I knew, every agent. Luckily, this was 2010. Mm-hmm. I was underwater on the mortgage. Right. I owed 138,000. Houses like it were going for 100. So nobody would even take my house. That's when I realized my mistake. I wasn't educated. I was the problem. I started looking for blogs like Bigger Pockets, books like One Rental at a Time, where somebody's done this before. Mm-hmm. They have to have written it down, and I can listen. So I got the audiobook version of everything. Educated myself, got a strong lease, screened a tenant, put a tenant in there, and finally, in around 2012 or so, that house started to actually cash flow. Okay. So it took me a while to get there. And I think most of us make that mistake with the first rental. Hopefully not as bad.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, geez, getting like, hey, yeah, I'm going to help you out, buddy. I'll let you move in. We'll do the handshake deal. And then you find out that he's moved out, renting it himself, pocketing the money and screwing you over. Yeah, that's some friend right there. Okay. All right. So we have the story for Marine Corps, law enforcement, teaching people how to get their CDLs. You decide that at least you're like, okay, I've got to get rental income on my tax return so that I can now show the bank that I make enough money to then hopefully house hack, get out of the apartment, get into something else. So the first experience, it goes horribly, but you do get it cash flowing within a couple of years. And then you buy your first rental in 2011. So I want people to pay attention to this because this is some of the things he said are very critical. Number one, it took a mental shift of wanting to do it. Then when he came up against lots of failures and mistakes, instead of just, this isn't for me, I don't want to do it, someone's better than me, smarter than me, more talented than me, it was, okay, I messed up. I need to get educated. And then you went out and you found education, bigger pockets, I assume some other books like you mentioned. So this is part one. This is how he got started. Now we're gonna do another video. We're gonna talk about how he went from that first rental to now where he's at 16. So stay tuned for the next video. Thanks, Dion.